You ever love someone so much that you'd give up everything for them, only to wonder if they ever really knew what it cost you? Let me tell you about James. A good man. The kind of son every parent dreams of having. He had it all figured out, 28 years old, climbing the ladder at a prestigious engineering firm in Seattle, engaged to a beautiful woman named Sarah, planning their future. Life was unfolding exactly as it should. Then one Tuesday morning, his phone rang. His father had suffered a massive stroke. The doctors said he'd survive, but he'd never be the same. Partially paralyzed on his left side. Speech slurred and difficult. He'd need round-the-clock care, the kind that costs thousands upon thousands of dollars every single month. James had an older brother, Marcus. A hotshot attorney in New York with a corner office and a wife who wore pearls to breakfast. When James called him, Marcus said he'd help coordinate care facilities but couldn't possibly leave his practice. Too many important clients depending on him, you understand. But James looked at his father lying in that hospital bed, trying so hard to say his name, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks, and he made a choice that would change everything. He quit his job. Broke off his engagement when Sarah couldn't understand why he wouldn't just put him in a home. Moved back into his childhood house to become his father's full-time caregiver. Before we go any further into this, I just want to say, if you feel a connection to these stories, a small click on that like button and subscribe would mean more to me than you know. It lets me know I'm not just speaking into the void, that you're really here with me. Alright, let's continue. 5 years. 5 years of James's life became a routine most people couldn't imagine. He learned how to lift his father from bed to wheelchair without hurting either of them. Mastered the patience required to help a proud man with his most basic needs, bathing him, dressing him, helping him to the bathroom. Things that stripped away dignity, but James always treated his father with respect. He learned to understand his father's garbled speech when no one else could. Developed a whole language between them through hand squeezes and eye movements and the few words his father could still manage to push out. The physical therapy sessions 3 times a week, the medication schedules, the special diet, the exercises. All of it fell on James's shoulders. But here's what the rest of the family never saw. The good moments. The Sunday mornings when James would wheel his father out to the back porch, and they'd sit in comfortable silence watching the birds. His father would squeeze his hand 3 times. Their code for I love you. The afternoons when James would read to him. His father's eyes would light up at the adventure stories, the mysteries, anything that took them both away from that house for a little while. The small victories. The day his father managed to say thank you clearly for the first time in months. The way his face would brighten every single time James walked into the room. James treasured a life that no one else could see the value in. Meanwhile, Marcus would visit maybe 3 times a year. Always with Diane, his wife, who looked around the house like she was touring a museum of sadness. They'd stay exactly 90 minutes, just long enough to take photos for their holiday cards. Look at us, the perfect family, caring for dear old Dad. His father would get agitated during those visits. James noticed but never understood why. Marcus would disappear into the study sometimes, saying he needed to make important calls. Diane would fidget with her phone, counting down the minutes until they could leave. Then they'd be gone again, back to their perfect life in New York. And James would be alone with his father once more, settling back into their quiet routine. The routine that cost him his career, his relationship, his social life, his savings. He lived on his father's social security and the small amount his father insisted on paying him, barely enough to cover groceries and utilities. But James never complained. Not once. Because when he looked at his father, really looked at him, he saw the man who taught him to ride a bike, who came to every little league game even when James spent the whole time on the bench, who worked 2 jobs to send him to college, who told him he was proud of him every single chance he got. This was love. Real love. The kind that doesn't count the cost. The kind that stays. 5 years passed this way. James's father grew frilier, but somehow, happier. More peaceful. Like he knew he was exactly where he needed to be, with exactly who he needed to be with. Then one quiet Wednesday evening in October, as the autumn leaves fell outside the window, James was reading to his father. One of those old westerns his dad loved. His father's breathing had been shallow all day, but it was calm, peaceful. Halfway through a chapter, James felt his father's hand tighten around his own. 3 squeezes. I love you. James squeezed back, 3 times. I love you too, Dad. His father took one more breath, and then he was gone. Just like that, quietly. No drama. No pain. Just peace. James sat there holding his hand for a long time, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of regret, but tears of gratitude. Gratitude that he'd been there. That his father hadn't died alone in some sterile facility surrounded by strangers. That their last words to each other, even without speaking, were "I love you." He'd given 5 years of his life, and he'd do it all again. The funeral was small. James arranged everything himself, choosing his father's favorite hymns, making sure every detail honored the man his father had been. Marcus flew in with Diane. Gave a beautiful eulogy about what a wonderful father they'd had. Diane dabbed at her eyes with a silk handkerchief. Distant relatives James barely knew offered their condolences and mentioned how nice it was that someone had been able to care for him at home. After everyone left, James stood alone at the grave. "I hope I made you proud, Dad," he whispered. "I hope you knew how much I loved you." He had no idea, absolutely no idea, that the worst was yet to come. That the sacrifice he'd made wouldn't be honored. It would be weaponized against him. 1 week after they buried his father, James received a certified letter. The law offices of Harrison and Associates requested his presence for the reading of his father's will. James had never thought much about the inheritance. Sure, he knew the family home would probably be his. His father had always said the little cabin upstate was meant for James since he was a boy. Beyond that, he didn't care. The 5 years with his father had been the real gift. But as he drove to that lawyer's office on a gray November morning, he had no way of knowing he was driving straight into an ambush. That his brother Marcus had been planning something during all those brief visits. Something cruel. Something unforgivable. And James, devoted, trusting, grief-stricken James, was about to discover that love and sacrifice mean nothing when greed gets involved. James walked into the offices of Harrison and Associates on a cold Monday morning, still numb from grief. The office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place that smelled like old money and older secrets. Mr. Harrison had been the family's attorney for over 20 years. James remembered him from his childhood, always at the holiday parties, always with a firm handshake and a practiced smile. Marcus was already there when James arrived, sitting in one of those high-backed chairs like he owned the place. Diane beside him, her expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses she hadn't bothered to remove indoors. "James," Marcus said, not getting up. Not offering a hug or even a handshake. Just, his name. Flat. Cold. "Marcus." James took a seat across from them, confused by the tension in the room. "Where's everyone else? I thought. I mean, aren't there other family members who should be here?" "It's just us," Mr. Harrison said, entering from a side door with a thick folder. He settled behind his massive desk, arranging papers with careful precision. "Your father kept his final wishes quite simple." Simple. That word should have been James's first warning. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat and began reading. All that legal language. "Being of sound mind and body and do hereby declare," and words that seemed designed to make simple things complicated. Then he got to the part that mattered. "To my eldest son, Marcus Thompson, I leave the entirety of my estate. This includes the family home at 42 Oak Ridge Drive, all financial assets, investment portfolios, and the cabin property in Pine Lake. Furthermore," James felt the room tilt. Wait. "I'm sorry," James interrupted, his voice barely a whisper. Can you repeat that?" Mr. Harrison looked at him with something that might have been pity. Or might have been contempt. "Hard to tell. Your father left everything to Marcus." That's not possible. Dad always said the cabin was mine. He told me. For years, he told me that." James looked at Marcus, searching his brother's face for some sign of surprise, confusion, anything. "Marcus, you know that's true. You know Dad promised me the cabin." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unchanged. "Mr. Harrison, please continue with the rest." "There's more?" James couldn't process what was happening. "Yes." Mr. Harrison's voice grew colder. "Your father included a letter explaining his decision. He expressed concerns about your behavior during his final years." The room went silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the wall. "Concerns?" James repeated. "What concerns?" "I took care of him. I gave up everything to take care of him." "That's exactly the problem," Marcus said, finally speaking. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he'd rehearsed this. "You isolated him, James. You kept him dependent on you. You controlled his access to the rest of the family." James stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "Are you insane? I called you every week begging you to visit more. You were the one who was too busy. Sit down, James. Mr. Harrison's voice cut through the air like a blade. James didn't sit. He couldn't. Diane reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. She slid it across Mr. Harrison's desk toward James with manicured fingers. What's this? James asked. Documentation, Marcus said. Of your behavior. Dad kept notes. Dates and times when you lost your temper. When you were rough with him during transfers. When you denied him his medication because you were angry. James felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie. I would never. There are also financial irregularities, Mr. Harrison added, opening another file. Your father's accounts show numerous unexplained withdrawals during the time you were his primary caregiver. Money that seems to have disappeared. I used that money for his care. For his medications, his therapy, his special food, everything I bought was for him. James's voice was rising, panic setting in. Do you have receipts? Marcus asked quietly. Documentation? Because we have bank statements showing cash withdrawals. Large ones. Regular ones. And no paper trail for where that money went. James's mind raced. Receipts. He'd kept some, but 5 years of receipts? He'd been focused on caring for his father, not building a legal defense against his own family. This is insane, James whispered. Marcus, we're brothers. We buried Dad a week ago. How can you do this? For the first time, something flickered across Marcus's face. But it wasn't guilt or shame or regret. It was satisfaction. I'm doing what Dad wanted, Marcus said. What he told me he wanted during my visits. He was afraid of you, James. Afraid of what you might do if he tried to get other care. He felt trapped. Trapped? James felt tears burning his eyes. He squeezed my hand 3 times every day. That was our code. I love you. He told me he loved me right before he died. He was a stroke victim with limited communication, Diane said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was crisp, matter of fact. You could have interpreted anything as anything. James looked from face to face, searching for humanity and finding none. The cabin, he said finally. Just give me the cabin. I don't care about the rest. The cabin was supposed to be mine. Dad promised. It's all I want. Mr. Harrison closed his folder. The will is clear, James. Everything goes to Marcus. But there's one more thing we need to discuss. Something in his tone made James's blood run cold. What? Marcus leaned forward. We could pursue criminal charges. Elder abuse. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. With the evidence we have, you'd be looking at significant jail time. The room started spinning. But we don't want to do that, Marcus continued, his voice almost gentle now. Almost kind. You're still my brother. Dad wouldn't want the family name dragged through a criminal trial. So here's what's going to happen. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. You're going to sign this. It's a statement saying you relinquish any claim to Dad's estate. That you acknowledge the will as legitimate. That you will not contest it in any way. And in exchange, we won't press charges. And if I don't sign? James asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we go to the police. Today. And you can explain to them why a vulnerable stroke victim lost tens of thousands of dollars while in your care. Why his medical records show unexplained bruising. Why family members witnessed you speaking harshly to him. I never hurt him, James said, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears. I loved him. Then you'll sign, Marcus said, sliding the paper across the desk with a pen. And we can all move on with our lives. James looked at the paper. At his brother. At the lawyer who'd known him since he was a child and was now looking at him like he was a criminal. He thought about his father. About 5 years of love and sacrifice. About 3 squeezes of the hand. About the peace in his father's eyes during those final moments. I need time, James said. I need to think. To get a lawyer of my own. You have 48 hours, Mr. Harrison said. After that, we proceed with criminal charges. I suggest you use that time wisely. Marcus stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. It doesn't have to be like this, James. Just sign the paper. Walk away. Start your life over. You're still young. You can rebuild. I gave him 5 years, James said, his voice breaking. 5 years of my life. Everything I had. And you're telling me he thought I was, what? Stealing from him? Hurting him? That's what you want me to believe? What I want doesn't matter, Marcus said. What matters is what Dad wanted. And he made his wishes clear. Diane was already at the door. Marcus turned to follow her. Marcus, James called out. His brother paused but didn't turn around. "Why are you doing this?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, without looking back, "Because I can." And they were gone. James stood alone in that office with Mr. Harrison, who was already packing up his files like this was just another day at work. Just another estate settled. Just another family destroyed. "You have 48 hours, James," Mr. Harrison reminded him. "I'd suggest you think very carefully about your next move. Fighting this will only make things worse for you." James walked out of that office in a daze. The November wind cut through his jacket as he stood on the sidewalk, trying to breathe. Trying to understand how his entire world had been ripped away in the span of 30 minutes. His father was gone. His inheritance was gone. His home, the home he'd lived in for 5 years, caring for his father, he'd have to leave. And worst of all, they were telling him his father had feared him. Had thought James was abusing him. Stealing from him. The man who'd squeezed his hand 3 times just before dying. "I love you." Had it all been a lie? No. No, James knew what he'd felt. What he'd seen in his father's eyes every single day. But how could he prove it? How could he fight this when they had documents, statements, evidence? When they had a signed will and a lawyer and the threat of criminal charges hanging over his head like a guillotine? James got in his car and drove. He didn't know where he was going. Away. Just away. By the time he pulled into the driveway of his childhood home, his father's home, the home that was no longer his, it was dark. He sat in the car for a long time, staring at the house through blurry eyes. 48 hours. 48 hours to decide whether to fight, or to walk away from everything. From his father's memory. From the truth. From justice. James finally got out of the car and walked to the front door. His hands shook as he unlocked it. The house was dark and silent. Empty. Just like his future. He stepped inside. And the weight of it all finally crushed him. James closed the door behind him and stood in the darkness of the empty house. He didn't turn on the lights. Couldn't bear to see his father's chair sitting empty. The medical equipment he'd spent the morning dismantling, packing away. The walker in the corner. The photos on the mantle of better times. All of it felt like evidence in a crime scene now. Evidence of a life that Marcus had twisted into something ugly. He walked through the living room like a ghost, his footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Made it to the couch before his legs gave out. And then, he broke. 5 years of holding it together. 5 years of being strong for his father. 5 years of swallowing his own needs, his own dreams, his own pain. It all came pouring out in the darkness. He sobbed. Deep, wrenching sounds that he'd never allowed himself to make when his father was alive. Because he'd had to be the strong one. The steady one. The one who kept it all together. But there was no one left to be strong for now. His father was gone. His brother had betrayed him. And everything he'd sacrificed, everything he'd given up, had been turned into a weapon against him. "Why?" he whispered into the empty room. "Why, Dad? If you didn't want me here, if you were afraid of me, why did you let me stay? Why did you hold my hand? Why did you tell me you loved me?" The silence was deafening. James pulled out his phone. Stared at the screen. Who could he call? Who would even believe him? Sarah, his ex-fiancée, had made it clear what she thought of his choice. His old colleagues from the engineering firm had stopped reaching out after the first year. His friends had drifted away when he'd stopped being available for dinners, for drinks, for the life they were all living while he changed his father's bedsheets at 2 in the morning. He was alone. Completely alone. The 48-hour deadline ticked in his mind like a bomb. Sign the paper and walk away. Or fight, and risk prison for crimes he never committed. What evidence did he have? What proof? His word against theirs. The memory of his father's hand squeezes against legal documents and bank statements and whatever lies Marcus had carefully constructed over 5 years of brief visits. James thought about his father's face during those visits from Marcus and Diane. The way he'd get agitated. Restless. James had always assumed it was because the visits were too short. Because Marcus never stayed long enough. Because his father wanted more time with his eldest son. But what if? What if his father had been trying to tell him something? What if Marcus had been doing something during those disappearances into the study? James sat up straight, his mind suddenly racing despite the exhaustion. The study. Marcus always went to the study during visits. Said he had important calls to make. Would be gone for 20, 30 minutes at a time. What had he been doing in there? James stood up on shaky legs and walked down the hallway. His hand found the light switch by muscle memory, and the study flooded with warm light. His father's desk. His books. His reading chair by the window where he'd spent so many hours before the stroke. James moved to the desk and started opening drawers. Looking for, what? He didn't know. Something. Anything that might explain what had happened. Old bills. Paid in full, all of them. James had made sure of that. Medical records. Showing consistent care, regular checkups, no signs of neglect. Letters. Cards. Photos. Nothing that helped. James was about to give up when his eye caught something. A card, tucked behind a photo frame. He pulled it out. It was a birthday card. From 2 years ago. His father's 75th. Inside, in his father's shaky handwriting from before the stroke got worse, to my James. Thank you for giving me the gift of home. Of family. Of love. You are the best son a father could ask for. James's vision blurred with fresh tears. This was the truth. This was who his father really was. What he really felt. But a greeting card wouldn't hold up in court. Wouldn't prove anything except that his father had loved him once upon a time, before Marcus claimed he'd become afraid. James set the card down carefully and sank into his father's desk chair. Put his head in his hands. 48 hours. Maybe he should just sign. Just walk away. Start over somewhere new. Try to forget. No. He couldn't forget. Wouldn't forget. His father deserved better than to have his memory twisted into lies. Deserved better than to have the love between them rewritten as fear and abuse. But how could he fight? James lifted his head and looked around the study. Really looked. This room held 5 years of his life. 5 years of caring for his father. 5 years of... Wait. His heart started pounding. The cameras. Oh God, the cameras. When he'd first moved in, back when he was still trying to figure out how to care for someone with his father's needs, he'd been terrified of missing something important. Of his father falling when James was in another room. Of a medical emergency happening and James not knowing fast enough, so he'd installed nanny cams. Small, discreet ones. Throughout the house. In the living room. The bedroom. The hallway. Even one in the study, because his father had insisted on spending time in here during those early days, and James had wanted to make sure he could see if his father needed help. The cameras had been connected to a hard drive that backed everything up automatically. After the first year, when James had grown confident in his caregiving routine, he'd stopped checking the footage regularly. Had almost forgotten the system was even there. But it had kept recording. 5 years of recordings. 5 years of proof. James jumped up so fast the chair rolled backward and crashed into the bookshelf. He moved to the closet where he'd installed the backup system. Pushed aside winter coats and old boxes. There. A small black box with a blinking green light. Still running. Still recording. Still backing up to the hard drive. 5 years of his life with his father. Every moment of care. Every gentle word. Every squeeze of the hand. Every visit from Marcus and Diane. Every disappearance into this very study. James's hands trembled as he disconnected the hard drive and carried it to the desk. He booted up his father's old computer, the one James had kept running for managing medical appointments and insurance claims. Please work. Please still be accessible. Please. The hard drive connected. Files appeared on the screen. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Organized by date and camera location. 5 years of truth. James clicked on a random file from 6 months ago. The video player opened. There he was. On screen. Helping his father from wheelchair to bed. Moving slowly. Carefully. Speaking softly. Easy, Dad. I've got you. Just lean on me. His father's voice, slurred but clear enough. Good boy. James fast-forwarded. Watched himself preparing dinner. Feeding his father with infinite patience. Reading to him. Laughing together at something on the television. No abuse. No harsh words. No violence. Just love. Just a son caring for his father. James opened another file. This one from 3 years ago. A Sunday afternoon. Marcus and Diane arriving. The stiff hellos. The uncomfortable small talk. Then Marcus standing up. I need to make some calls. I'll use the study. The camera switched automatically to the study feed. Marcus entered. Closed the door. But he wasn't making calls. He went straight to the filing cabinet. Started going through papers. Pulled out what looked like legal documents. James leaned closer to the screen, his heart hammering. Marcus was photographing documents with his phone. Bank statements. Insurance policies. The deed to the house. Then he pulled out something else. A blank piece of paper. Set it on the desk. He was tracing something. No. Not tracing. Practicing. Practicing a signature. Their father's signature. James felt ice water flood his veins. He opened another file. Different date. Another Marcus visit. Same thing. Marcus in the study. Going through files. Photographing documents. Practicing signatures. Then came a file from 8 months ago. Marcus visiting on a Tuesday morning, a time when James had mentioned he'd be taking their father to a doctor's appointment. But James had forgotten something and returned home early. The camera caught it all. Marcus in the living room. Their father in his wheelchair. Diane standing guard by the window. And Marcus, leaning over their father, holding papers. Just sign here, Dad. It's just updating your insurance beneficiaries. Standard stuff. James should have handled this already, but you know how forgetful he is. Their father's voice on the recording, weak but clear. No, want. James. Dad, this is important. James doesn't need to know about this. It's between you and me. Just sign. Right here. No. Marcus's voice growing harder. Dad, sign the paper. Don't make this difficult. Their father turning his head away. Marcus straightening up, frustrated. Looking at Diane. Some silent communication passing between them. Then Diane speaking, her voice sweet as poison. Remember what we talked about, Dad? About how the money's been disappearing? About those bruises you had last month? We're just trying to protect you. James, good. James. James is stealing from you, Marcus said flatly. We have proof. The bank statements don't lie. Just sign the paper so we can make sure your wishes are protected. Their father's hand shaking as he tried to push the papers away. And then the front door opening. James's voice calling out, Dad? I forgot your medication. We need to bring it to the appointment. The camera caught Marcus quickly folding up the papers and stuffing them in his jacket. Diane moving away from the wheelchair. Both of them with pleasant smiles by the time James entered the room. Just keeping Dad company, Marcus had said. You two have a good appointment. James sat back in the chair, his entire body shaking. It was all there. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every moment of fraud. Marcus trying to coerce their father into signing documents. Their father refusing. Saying no. Saying James's name. And the signature practices. The document photography. The careful construction of a false narrative over years of brief visits. His father hadn't been afraid of James. He'd been afraid of Marcus. That's why he got agitated during the visits. That's why he'd squeezed James's hand 3 times as soon as they left. I love you. I need you. Don't leave me. James opened more files. Found more evidence. Hours and hours of it. Including, his breath caught, including footage from just 3 weeks before his father died. Marcus visiting while James was at the pharmacy. Marcus putting papers in front of their father shaking his head, trying to speak. Dad, you're dying. We both know it. Just sign the will. Leave everything to me. I'll make sure it's handled properly. James has taken enough from you already. James, stays. James, gets, cabin. Dad, be reasonable. James gave up his life because he's weak. He had nowhere else to go. He's been living off you for 5 years. I'm the one who built something. I'm the one who can handle the responsibility. No. James, good boy, my, good boy. And Marcus, leaning close to their father's ear, his voice dropping to something cold and cruel. Then I'll make sure James pays for turning you against your own family. I'll make sure everyone knows what he did to you. The video showed their father's face. The fear in his eyes. Not fear of James. Fear of what Marcus would do to James. James closed the video player. He had everything he needed. 5 years of proof. Of truth. Of love. And proof of fraud. Of coercion. Of his brother's systematic attempt to steal their father's estate and destroy James's life in the process. His hands were still shaking, but not from despair anymore. From rage. From righteous, burning rage. And beneath that, hope. For the first time since walking out of that lawyer's office, James felt like he could breathe. He looked at the clock. 36 hours left before the deadline. More than enough time. James picked up his phone and started searching for attorneys. Not the kind Marcus had. Not the old money types who played golf with judges. The kind who fought. The kind who won. The kind who would look at this evidence and smile. He found one with good reviews. Specialized in estate fraud and elder abuse cases. He sent an email. Attached a sample video file. Wrote, I have proof my brother committed fraud and forgery. I have everything on camera. Please call me. Then he sat back in his father's chair, the hard drive sitting safely on the desk in front of him. I'm going to make this right, Dad, he whispered to the empty room. I promise you. I'm going to show everyone the truth. Who you really were. Who I really am. What Marcus really did. 3 squeezes of an invisible hand. I love you. I love you too, Dad. And I'm not giving up. I'm not signing that paper. I'm not walking away. James stood up and walked to the window. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day. The day everything would change. Marcus thought he'd won. Thought he'd backed James into a corner with no way out. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated how much a son would fight for his father's memory. And he'd never known about the cameras. James smiled for the first time in a week. Game on, big brother, he said quietly. Game on. James didn't sleep that night. Couldn't sleep. He sat at his father's desk, going through 5 years of footage with a notepad beside him, writing down dates, times, specific moments, building a timeline of Marcus's lies. By the time the sun was fully up, he had 17 pages of notes, 17 pages of documented fraud. At 8 a.m. sharp, his phone rang. This is attorney Rebecca Chen, a woman's voice said. Professional. Direct. I received your email. And I watched the video you sent. How much more footage do you have? 5 years worth, James said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Every room in the house. Every visit. Everything. There was a pause. Then, can you be at my office in 2 hours? Bring the hard drive. Bring every piece of documentation you have. Medical records, bank statements, everything. And Mr. Thompson, don't talk to anyone about this. Not your brother. Not his lawyer. No one. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Because what you've stumbled onto isn't just estate fraud. If what I saw in that video is representative of the full collection, your brother is looking at multiple felonies. We need to handle this very, very carefully. James was at her office 90 minutes later. Rebecca Chen was younger than he'd expected. Mid-30s, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, a handshake that meant business. Her office was small but organized. Wall-to-wall law books and case files stacked with military precision. Show me, she said, gesturing to the laptop on her desk. James connected the hard drive and started pulling up files. He'd organized them the night before. Put the most damning evidence into a single folder. They spent 3 hours watching Marcus practicing their father's signature. Over and over. Different visits. Different dates. Refining it. Marcus photographing documents. Insurance policies. Bank statements. Property deeds. The original will that left the cabin to James and split everything else evenly. Marcus and Diane pressuring their father to sign papers. Their father refusing. Saying no. Saying James's name. The visit 3 weeks before their father died. Marcus threatening to destroy James if their father didn't cooperate. Then came the footage from the final week of their father's life. James hadn't watched this yet. Hadn't been able to bring himself to relive those last days. But Rebecca needed to see everything. The camera showed James helping his father into bed. His father was so weak by then. But still conscious. Still aware. I love you, Dad, James's voice on the recording. You rest now. 3 squeezes. James watched Rebecca's expression soften slightly as she saw it. The love between father and son captured in that simple gesture. Then came footage from 2 days before the end. Marcus had visited. James had been there, but he'd stepped out to get the mail. 5 minutes. That's all Marcus had needed. The camera caught him leaning over their father barely conscious. Struggling to focus. Just one signature, Dad. That's all. Then I'll leave you alone. I promise. He'd put the pen in their father's weak hand, guided it to paper. Their father's signature came out shaky, barely legible. But there. Perfect, Marcus had said, folding the paper quickly. See? That wasn't so hard. Their father's eyes closing. A single tear rolling down his weathered cheek. By the time James came back into the room, Marcus was sitting casually in the chair by the window, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. Rebecca stopped the video. Do you know what document he signed? She asked. The will, James said quietly. It has to be. The one that left everything to Marcus. The one Mr. Harrison read to me. Rebecca nodded slowly. Your father was clearly not of sound mind at that point. He was dying. Probably heavily medicated for pain. That signature would never hold up in court even without the context of coercion. She leaned back in her chair, her mind clearly working through the legal angles. Here's what we have, she said. Fraud, forgery, undue influence, elder coercion, possibly even false imprisonment if we can argue your father felt unable to communicate his true wishes. And the threat Marcus made about destroying you, that's extortion. What about Mr. Harrison? James asked. The lawyer. Did he know? Good question. Let me see the footage from the meetings. James pulled up several files showing Marcus meeting with Mr. Harrison. Some visits were at the house. Some appeared to be at the law office based on the background when Marcus was on speakerphone. In one conversation, Marcus's voice came through clearly. We need the new will to be airtight. Dad's not competent anymore. James has been manipulating him for years. We're just protecting the family assets. Mr. Harrison's voice. If James contests, we'll need documentation of the abuse claims. I'm working on it, Marcus had said. I've been keeping records. False records. Fabricated evidence. All of it lies. Rebecca's expression grew darker with each video. Harrison knew, she said. Maybe not the full extent, but he knew something wasn't right and looked the other way. That's disbarment. Possibly criminal conspiracy. She started taking notes. Lots of notes. Okay, she said finally. Here's what's going to happen. You have, how long until the deadline? James checked his phone. 26 hours. Perfect. We're not signing anything. Instead, we're filing an emergency petition to invalidate the will. We're also filing a police report for fraud and elder abuse, but not against you. Against Marcus. James felt his chest tighten with something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Can we win? He asked. Rebecca looked at him directly. Mr. Thompson, I've been practicing estate law for 12 years. I've seen a lot of contested wills. A lot of family disputes. But I have never, and I mean never, seen evidence this clear. Your brother handed us a gift by being arrogant enough to commit his crimes in a house he didn't know was being recorded. She clicked through more files, shaking her head. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is how badly your brother is going to lose. We're talking about the will being thrown out entirely. Criminal charges. Possible jail time. And, if you want to pursue it, a civil suit for emotional distress and defamation. I want him to pay, James said, surprised by the steel in his own voice. Not just for what he did to me. For what he did to Dad. For scaring him. For making his last weeks on Earth miserable because he was trying to protect me from Marcus's threats. Rebecca nodded. Then that's what we'll do. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Marcus is an attorney himself. He'll fight. He'll make accusations. He'll try to discredit you and this evidence. Are you prepared for that? James thought about his father. About 5 years of love and sacrifice. About 3 squeezes of the hand. About the peace in his father's eyes when it was just the two of them. I'm prepared, he said. Whatever it takes. Good. Rebecca stood up and offered her hand. Then let's go to war. The next 24 hours were a blur. Rebecca worked with terrifying efficiency. She filed the emergency petition with the probate court. Compiled the evidence into a presentation that was impossible to ignore. Reached out to contacts in the district attorney's office. James provided his own documentation. Medical records showing his father's consistent care. Bank statements with every receipt he'd managed to save. Character references from his father's doctors, the physical therapists, the home health aides who'd visited occasionally. Everyone remembered James. Everyone spoke of his devotion. His patience. His love. Not a single person had ever seen anything remotely resembling abuse. Then came the most satisfying call of James's life. Mr. Harrison's office. Demanding to know why James hadn't signed the release. Rebecca took the call on speaker. This is attorney Rebecca Chen representing James Thompson. My client will not be signing any documents relinquishing his inheritance rights. Furthermore, we've filed an emergency petition to invalidate the will on grounds of fraud, forgery, and elder coercion. We've also submitted a complaint to the state bar regarding your conduct, Mr. Harrison. You'll be receiving official notice within the hour. The silence on the other end was beautiful. You can't, there's no basis for. We have video evidence, Rebecca said calmly. 5 years of it. Showing Marcus Thompson coercing his father, forging documents, and threatening to destroy James if their father didn't comply. We also have recordings of your conversations with Marcus where you discussed fabricating evidence of abuse. So I'd suggest you retain counsel, Mr. Harrison. You're going to need it. The line went dead. James looked at Rebecca. She was smiling. That, she said, is what we call a checkmate opening move. 2 days later, they were in court. Emergency probate hearing. Judge Maria Santos presiding. Marcus and his attorney on one side of the courtroom. James and Rebecca on the other. Marcus looked confident. Too confident. He thought this was just James making noise. Making empty threats. He thought the will and Mr. Harrison's reputation would carry the day. He had no idea what was coming. Judge Santos reviewed the petition quickly, her expression neutral. Ms. Chen, you're claiming the will is fraudulent. That's a serious allegation. I hope you have substantial evidence. We do, Your Honor. Rebecca stood up. We have video evidence of the fraud being committed. Multiple instances. Over a period of years. With audio. If it pleases the court, we'd like to present this evidence now. Marcus's attorney stood up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We haven't been given time to review any alleged evidence. We request a continuance. Denied, Judge Santos said. This is an emergency hearing about a vulnerable elder's last wishes. We proceed. Ms. Chen, show me what you have. Rebecca set up the laptop, connected it to the courtroom's display system. And then she played the videos. One after another. Marcus practicing their father's signature. The judge leaned forward. Marcus coercing their father to sign documents. Their father saying no. The judge's expression hardened. Marcus threatening to destroy James. The judge's jaw tightened. The final video. Marcus forcing the pen into their dying father's hand. Their father's tear. When the videos ended, the courtroom was silent. Judge Santos looked at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, you're an attorney yourself, correct? Marcus had gone pale. Yes, Your Honor, but I can explain. I don't want to hear it. The judge's voice was ice. What I just witnessed is fraud. It's elder abuse. It's a disgrace to your profession and to basic human decency. The will dated 3 weeks before Mr. Thompson Sr.'s death is hereby declared null and void. Marcus's attorney tried to speak. Your Honor, if we could just. I'm not finished. Judge Santos cut him off. I'm also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. And I'm ordering an immediate investigation into Mr. Harrison's conduct. He may join Mr. Thompson in facing charges. She turned to James. Mr. Thompson, I am deeply sorry for what you've endured. The court recognizes that you provided exemplary care for your father. The medical records, the testimony from healthcare providers, and most importantly, the videos of your actual interactions with your father show nothing but love and devotion. Your father's original will, the one executed before his illness, is hereby reinstated. That document left the family home and cabin to you, with other assets split between you and your brother. She paused, looking back at Marcus with pure contempt. However, given the circumstances, I'm also granting Mr. James Thompson the right to pursue civil action for the emotional distress and defamation he suffered. Mr. Marcus Thompson, you should consider yourself fortunate if avoiding prison is the best outcome you achieve. The gavel came down. It was over. Just like that. 5 years of sacrifice vindicated in 45 minutes. James sat there, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. Marcus stormed out of the courtroom, his attorney scrambling after him. Diane followed, her face hidden behind sunglasses. Rebecca put her hand on James's shoulder. You did it. We did it. Justice was served. James finally found his voice. When can I go home? As soon as the paperwork is filed. A few days at most. The house is yours, James. Just like your father wanted. James nodded slowly. Then something occurred to him. The videos, he said. Can I keep them? I need to watch them sometimes. To remember. To see Dad happy again. They're yours, Rebecca said gently. All of it. Your memories. Your proof. Your truth. That night, James sat in his father's study. He pulled up one of the videos at random. From 3 years ago. A quiet Sunday afternoon. There he was, reading to his father. His father's eyes closed, a small smile on his face. Content. Safe. Loved. At the end of the chapter, his father's hand reaching out. 3 squeezes. James squeezed back on the screen, even though it was just a recording. I did it, Dad, he whispered. I proved the truth. Everyone knows now. What you really felt. What really happened. Who Marcus really is. The recording continued. His younger self on screen, tucking the blanket around his father. Rest now, Dad. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. I kept that promise, James said to the empty room. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed. I fought. Just like you taught me to. 3 squeezes from the past. I love you. I love you too, Dad. Always. James closed the laptop and looked around the study. His study now. His home now. Everything his father had wanted him to have. But more than that, everything his father's love had given him. The strength to fight. The courage to stand up against lies. The proof that love, real love, always finds a way to shine through the darkness. Even if it takes 5 years of recordings to show the world what a son and father already knew. That devotion isn't weakness. Sacrifice isn't foolishness. And love, true love, never stays hidden forever. 3 weeks later, James stood in a different courtroom. This one was bigger, fuller. District Attorney's Office versus Marcus Thompson. Criminal fraud. Forgery. Elder abuse. Coercion. The charges read like a catalog of everything James had known in his heart but couldn't prove, until the cameras gave him the evidence he needed. Rebecca sat beside him in the gallery. She'd passed the case to the prosecutors, but she'd promised to be there for every hearing. "You deserve to see this through," she'd told him. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with his new attorney. Not Mr. Harrison. Harrison was facing his own disbarment hearing and had already agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for a lighter sentence. Turned out loyalty only went so far when prison time was on the table. Diane wasn't there. She'd filed for divorce 2 days after the probate hearing. Apparently being married to a criminal who'd emotionally abused his dying father wasn't the look she wanted for her social circle. James watched his brother's back. The stiff shoulders. The way Marcus refused to turn around and make eye contact. Good. Let him feel what it was like to be alone. To be judged. To have everyone believe the worst about you. The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, the state calls James Thompson to the stand." James took a breath. Rebecca squeezed his hand. "Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do." He walked to the stand. Placed his hand on the Bible. Swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The prosecutor was a woman named Linda Martinez. Sharp. Thorough. She'd reviewed every second of footage, every medical record, every piece of evidence. "Mr. Thompson," she began gently. "Can you tell the court about your relationship with your father?" And so James did. He told them about the phone call that changed his life. About the choice he'd made to care for his father. About 5 years of morning routines and therapy sessions and quiet moments that meant everything. He told them about Marcus's visits. How brief they were. How his father would get agitated. How James had never understood why until he saw the recordings. "Did you ever abuse your father?" Martinez asked. "Never." James's voice was steady. Strong. "I loved him. Every single day. Even the hard days. Even when I was exhausted. Even when it cost me everything else in my life. I loved him." "Can you tell the court about the code you had with your father? The 3 squeezes?" James felt his throat tighten. It started a few months after his stroke. His speech was so limited. But he could squeeze my hand. So we developed a code. 3 squeezes meant "I love you." It was how we talked. How we said everything that mattered. "And when was the last time your father squeezed your hand 3 times? "Right before he died. I was reading to him. He squeezed my hand. 3 times. I squeezed back. Then he let go. There wasn't a dry eye in the jury box." Martinez pulled up a video on the courtroom display. "Is this you, Mr. Thompson?" It was footage from a year ago. James helping his father into the shower. Moving so carefully. Talking softly. "Easy, Dad. I've got you. You're safe." His father's voice, slurred but content. "Good boy. That's me," James said. "That's us. That's what every day looked like." Martinez played more videos. James reading. James cooking. James laughing at something his father said. James holding his father's hand during a difficult therapy session. James celebrating small victories. His father taking 3 steps with the walker. His father managing to eat a full meal. His father sleeping peacefully through the night. 5 years of love captured in high definition. Then Martinez switched to the other videos. The ones that mattered for the case. "Mr. Thompson, can you identify the man in this video?" Marcus. Practicing their father's signature. Over and over. "That's my brother. Marcus Thompson. And what is he doing?" "Learning to forge my father's signature." Marcus's attorney objected. "Speculation, Your Honor." Overruled, Judge Santos said. She was presiding over this case too. "The video speaks for itself." Continue, Ms. Martinez. More videos. Marcus coercing their father. Marcus threatening James. Marcus forcing the pen into their dying father's hand. Each one worse than the last. James watched the jury. watched their expressions shift from neutral to horrified to disgusted. They saw it. All of it. The truth his father couldn't speak but the cameras had captured. When Marcus's attorney cross-examined James, he tried to poke holes in the narrative, tried to suggest James had edited the footage, had staged scenes, had manipulated the evidence. But the timestamps didn't lie. The metadata didn't lie. The independent forensic analysis didn't lie. Most importantly, the testimony from his father's doctors didn't lie. Dr. Elizabeth Warren took the stand after James. She'd been his father's primary physician for the entire 5 years. In all my visits to that home, she testified, I never once saw evidence of abuse or neglect. Mr. James Thompson was an exemplary caregiver. Patient. Informed. Devoted. His father's health improved under his care. His father was happy. I documented that in my notes repeatedly. Did you ever observe Mr. Marcus Thompson during your visits? Martinez asked. Once or twice. He seemed impatient. Asked several times about his father's life expectancy. About when the estate would be settled. It struck me as inappropriate, but it wasn't my place to comment. Did Mr. James Thompson ever ask about those things? Never. His only questions were about his father's comfort, his quality of life, how to make him happier and healthier. The physical therapist testified next. Then the home health aide who'd helped occasionally. All of them said the same thing. James was devoted. His father was loved. There was never any indication of abuse. Only love. Then came the evidence about the forged will. Handwriting experts who compared Marcus's practice signatures to the final document. Financial experts who tracked the movement of assets Marcus had tried to hide. And finally, Mr. Harrison himself. He took the stand looking 20 years older than he had at the first will reading. His reputation destroyed. His career over. Did you know the will was forged? Martinez asked. Harrison hesitated. Then, I suspected something wasn't right. But Marcus was persuasive. He's an attorney. He presented documentation. I wanted to believe him. The fees for managing the estate were substantial. I looked the other way when I should have looked closer. Did Marcus Thompson tell you to fabricate evidence of abuse against James Thompson? He said we needed to be prepared in case James contested. He said James had isolated their father, manipulated him. He showed me bank records with cash withdrawals and said James was stealing. I believed him. Why? Harrison looked at James for the first time. Because it was easier than believing a son would do this to his own father. Easier than believing an attorney would commit fraud. I was wrong. I'm sorry. James said nothing. The apology meant nothing. Harrison had been willing to destroy James's life for a payday. Sorry didn't fix that. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Marcus stood as the verdict was read. His face blank. Empty. Like he couldn't process what was happening. Judge Santos set sentencing for 30 days out. Mr. Marcus Thompson, you have betrayed your profession, your family, and most egregiously, your own dying father. You will have ample time to reflect on your actions in the coming months. She dismissed the court. Marcus was led away in handcuffs. He still didn't look at James. Couldn't look at him. Because looking at James would mean facing what he'd done. What he'd tried to take. Who he'd tried to destroy. The sentencing hearing was brief. Marcus's attorney argued for leniency. Talked about his service to the community. His otherwise clean record. His remorse. But Judge Santos wasn't interested. Mr. Thompson, you are an educated man. A man of the law. You knew exactly what you were doing was wrong, and you did it anyway. You traumatized your dying father. You attempted to steal from your brother who sacrificed everything to provide care. You suborned perjury. You committed fraud. And you did it all with calculation and malice. She sentenced him to 6 years in prison. Plus restitution to James for legal fees and emotional distress. Plus community service upon release. Mr. Harrison got 2 years and permanent disbarment. It was over. Finally, truly over. James stood in the empty courtroom after everyone had left. Rebecca had gone to file some final paperwork. He was alone with his thoughts. 6 years. Marcus would be in prison for 6 years. It should have felt like victory. Like justice. And it did, but it also felt hollow. Sad. They'd been brothers once. Long ago, before money and greed and pride had poisoned everything. They'd played together as boys. Shared a room. Shared secrets. Shared a father who loved them both. And now? Now Marcus would spend the next 6 years in a cell, paying for what greed had driven him to do. James didn't feel triumph, he felt grief. For the brother he'd lost long before any of this started. For the family that could have been but never was. But he also felt peace. His father's name was cleared. His own name was cleared. The truth was known. That mattered more than revenge ever could. 2 months later, James stood in front of his father's grave. The headstone was simple. Just his name and dates and a line James had chosen, "Beloved father. His love lives on." "Hey, Dad," James said softly, setting down fresh flowers. "I thought I'd update you on everything. Though I guess you probably already know, wherever you are." The autumn wind rustled through the cemetery trees. "Marcus got 6 years. The house is mine. The cabin's mine. Everything you wanted me to have. But more than that, everyone knows the truth now. About how much you loved me. About what we shared. About what really happened." James sat down on the grass, not caring that it was damp. "I've been watching the videos again. All of them. 5 years of us. And you know what I realized? Every single day, even the hardest ones, they were worth it. Because I got to know you. Really know you. Not as some distant figure who went to work and came home tired, but as a person. We became friends, Dad. Best friends." 3 squeezes of the grass. "Imaginary. But it felt right. I'm thinking about going back to engineering. Rebecca says with the settlement money, I can take my time, find the right position. Or maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll work with other caregivers. Help them understand what they're doing matters. That the sacrifice is worth it. That love like ours, it's rare and precious and should be protected." A bird landed on the headstone. Looked at James with bright eyes. Then flew away. "I miss you, Dad. Every single day. But I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. Because you taught me what really matters. Not money. Not careers. Not any of that. Love. Family. Being there for the people who need you. That's what matters. That's what lasts." James stood up, brushing grass from his jeans. "I'll be back next week. And the week after that. And every week for as long as I'm able. Because that's what we do. We show up. We stay. We love." He placed his hand on the headstone. "Thank you, Dad. For everything. For choosing me. For trusting me. For loving me even when I didn't think I deserved it. You made me better. Made me stronger. Made me the man I am today." 3 pats on the stone. "I love you. Rest well, Dad. Your fight is over. Mine's just beginning. But I'm ready. Because you taught me how to stand up for what's right. How to fight for truth. How to never give up on love." James walked back to his car. The one that used to be his father's. He'd kept it. Couldn't bear to sell it. As he drove away from the cemetery, he felt lighter than he had in months. The legal battles were over. The truth was known. Justice had been served. But more than that, he'd kept his promise. He'd proven that 5 years of love mattered more than 5 minutes of greed. That a son's devotion couldn't be erased by a brother's lies. That truth, real truth, always finds its way to light. Even if it takes 1,000 hours of video footage to show the world what a father and son already knew in their hearts. James pulled into the driveway of his home. His father's home. Their home. He sat there for a moment, looking at the house where so much had happened. So much pain. So much love. So much life. Then he got out and walked to the front door. Unlocked it. Stepped inside. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Home. 6 months later, James received a letter. From Marcus. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of him wanted to throw it away unread. Part of him needed to know what his brother had to say. He opened it. The letter was short. Written in Marcus's careful handwriting. "James. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable. I know that now. I've had a lot of time to think. About Dad. About you. About who I became and why. I was jealous, James. You were always the good son. The one who did the right thing. The one Dad was proud of. And I built a career. Made money. Married well. But none of it ever felt like enough. None of it ever made Dad look at me the way he looked at you. When he got sick and you stepped up, it made it worse. You proved you were better than me in every way that matters. So I told myself you were taking advantage. That you were the bad guy. That I was protecting Dad. But I was really just protecting my ego. My pride. My greed. I watched some of the videos during the trial. Saw you with Dad. Saw how gentle you were. How patient. How loving. That's who you've always been. And I tried to destroy you for it. Asterisk. Asterisk. I don't know if there's any path back from what I've done. To you. To Dad's memory. To being brothers again. Probably not. Probably I burned that bridge beyond repair. Asterisk. Asterisk. But I wanted you to know. I see it now. I see who you are. Who I should have been. And I'm sorry. For all of it. Asterisk. Asterisk. Take care of yourself, little brother. You deserve every good thing life has to offer. Asterisk. Marcus. James read the letter twice. Then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday he'd respond. Maybe someday the wound would heal enough for forgiveness. But not today. Today, he had other things to do. He was meeting with a group that supported family caregivers. Sharing his story. Helping others understand they weren't alone. That their sacrifice mattered. That love, real love, was always worth fighting for. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. As he left, he passed the wall of photos in the hallway. Pictures of his father. Pictures of them together. 5 years of memories captured in frames. And in the center, a new photo. The last one James had taken before his father passed. His father in the wheelchair, James kneeling beside him, both of them smiling. His father's hand on James's shoulder. James had the photo enlarged and framed. Added a small plaque underneath with 3 words. Asterisk. Love always wins. Asterisk. Because in the end, it had. Not through money or power or legal maneuvering. But through truth. Through devotion. Through 5 years of recorded proof that love, real, sacrificial, unconditional love, could never be erased by lies. James touched the frame gently. 3 taps. I love you. Then he walked out into the sunshine. Ready to help others find their own strength. Ready to honor his father's memory by living the lessons they'd learned together. Ready to prove that even in the darkest betrayals. Even when family turns against you. Even when everything seems lost. Love finds a way. Truth finds a voice. And justice, eventually, finds its mark. Thank you for walking this difficult road with me to the very end. If this story resonated with you, you can support our community by sending a super thanks. It helps me continue to bring these important stories to light. On the screen now are 2 more stories that I know will touch your soul. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.